David Walliams was one of the most recognizable faces on Britain's Got Talent. He was the judge who could turn an awkward audition into a comedy sketch, the one who seemed willing to say what the other judges wouldn't, and the man who became so closely associated with the show that, for many viewers, it was difficult to imagine the panel without him. Then, almost overnight, he was gone. No dramatic farewell. No final episode explaining what happened. No emotional goodbye to the contestants or his fellow judges. Just a vacancy at the desk in 2023, with Bruno Tonioli sitting where Walliams had spent a decade. And by then, something had already happened behind the scenes that changed everything. The story of Walliams leaving Britain's Got Talent is not simply about a comedian deciding it was time for a new challenge. It is about leaked recordings, offensive remarks, a furious public reaction, questions about privacy, a legal battle, and ultimately a relationship between Walliams and the show that appeared impossible to repair. But the timing is what makes the story so complicated. Because Walliams had joined Britain's Got Talent in 2012 and remained on the panel until 2022. During those 10 years, he became one of the show's most popular judges, winning the National Television Award for Best Judge 3 times. He wasn't simply another celebrity sitting behind the desk. He had become part of the show's identity. His chemistry with Simon Cowell, Amanda Holden, and Alicia Dixon was one of the reasons the panel worked. But behind those smiles, there was another side to the job. Walliams arrived at the show with an unusual advantage. He already understood television comedy. He knew how to create a character, how to exaggerate a reaction, and, perhaps most importantly, how to keep an audience watching. On Britain's Got Talent, that translated perfectly. He could be ridiculous one moment and surprisingly emotional the next. He developed running jokes with contestants. He flirted with the absurdity of the format. And sometimes, he appeared to deliberately push Simon Cowell's buttons. For viewers, it was entertainment. But there was always another reality behind the cameras. The judges weren't simply watching auditions. They were filming for hours. Their microphones were recording conversations between performances, and some of those conversations would eventually become the reason Walliams left. The problem began with auditions filmed at the London Palladium in January 2020. According to a leaked transcript later obtained by The Guardian, Walliams made derogatory comments about contestants during breaks in filming. The comments were not broadcast on the program, but microphones used around the judges captured them. One contestant was reportedly referred to using an extremely offensive insult. Another remark about a female contestant was sexually explicit. And once those words became public, the carefully constructed television image of David Walliams changed almost instantly. On November 10, 2022, Walliams issued an apology. He described the comments as disrespectful and said they had been private conversations that were never intended to be shared. But he still accepted responsibility. That distinction became important, because Walliams wasn't denying that he had said the things attributed to him. His argument was essentially that the comments were private conversations, made away from the contestants, and never intended for broadcast. Thames Television, the production company behind Britain's Got Talent, also acknowledged that the language was inappropriate. ITV said it did not condone the remarks and stressed that participant welfare was a priority. And suddenly, the question wasn't whether Walliams had made the comments. It was whether he could remain the face of a family entertainment show after they became public. That was a much harder problem. On November 25, 2022, reports emerged that Walliams would leave Britain's Got Talent after 10 years. At first, however, even that wasn't completely straightforward. ITV said the 2023 judging panel had not yet been finalized. His future was officially described as uncertain. But the writing was already on the wall. Within days, his departure became reality. And when the show returned in 2023, Walliams was nowhere to be seen. Instead, Bruno Tonioli joined Simon Cowell, Amanda Holden, and Alicia Dixon. For the audience, it looked like a replacement. But for Walliams, it was the end of a decade. And that raises the question, was the leaked recording really the entire reason he left? The answer appears to be more complicated. Walliams' departure did not end the story. It created another one. Walliams subsequently took legal action against Fremantle, the company behind Britain's Got Talent, over the circumstances surrounding the disclosure of the recordings. That meant something unusual was happening. There were effectively two separate arguments. One concerned what Walliams had said. The other concerned how those private comments had become public. Those are not the same issue. And Walliams' legal action made that distinction impossible to ignore. In 2023, Fremantle and Walliams reached an out-of-court settlement, and the company apologized for the circumstances surrounding the leak. The exact financial terms were not publicly disclosed, although reports described the settlement as substantial. So Walliams had apologized for the comments. But the production company had also ultimately resolved a dispute with him over the release of those comments. That complicated the simple version of the story. He wasn't merely a disgraced judge being removed from television. He was also someone who believed his privacy had been violated. And that is probably the closest thing we have to an explanation for why his relationship with Britain's Got Talent ended so badly. But there was a bigger problem. Walliams' BGT controversy didn't happen in isolation. By this point, his public image had already become more complicated. He had spent years building two completely different careers. One was comedy, the other was children's literature, and both had increasingly come under scrutiny. His comedy work with Matt Lucas on Little Britain had already been reassessed because of controversial material, including blackface and racial stereotypes. Then, in 2021, one of Walliams' children's stories was removed from a book following criticism over its depiction of a Chinese character. None of these controversies automatically explains his departure from Britain's Got Talent, but together, they created a very different cultural environment from the one Walliams entered in 2012. The television personality who had once been celebrated for pushing boundaries was now operating in an era where those boundaries were being questioned much more aggressively. And then came another controversy, that the 2025 bombshell. Walliams' career faced another major setback in December 2025 when HarperCollins UK announced it would no longer publish new books by him. The decision followed reports of allegations concerning inappropriate behavior toward junior female employees. But there is an important distinction here. Walliams has strongly denied the allegations. Through his spokesperson, he said he had never been informed of the allegations raised by the publisher, had not been part of any investigation, and had not been given an opportunity to respond. He said he was taking legal advice. HarperCollins did not publicly detail the internal matter, citing privacy. So those allegations remain allegations, not established findings against him. But the development matters because it shows that the controversy surrounding Walliams did not end with Britain's Got Talent. His public image continued to be reassessed. And suddenly, the question of what happened at BGT looked less like an isolated scandal and more like a turning point. So what really happened? The simplest answer is that Walliams left Britain's Got Talent after the publication of offensive remarks he made during filming. But that's only half the story. He had spent 10 years building a relationship with the program. He was successful. He was popular. He had become synonymous with the panel. Then private comments recorded during auditions became public. He apologized. The broadcaster condemned the language. Reports emerged that he would leave. He did. He later pursued legal action over the disclosure of the recordings, and the dispute was eventually settled. That is the documented timeline. What we cannot honestly say is that Walliams has revealed some secret alternative reason that completely overturns this account. There is no credible evidence that he was secretly fired over some entirely different scandal or that Simon Cowell personally engineered his removal. There were plenty of rumors. There were plenty of theories. But the public record points overwhelmingly toward the leaked remarks and everything that followed them. And perhaps the strangest part is what happened afterward. The show continued. Bruno Tonioli became the new wild card. Amanda Holden, Alicia Dixon, and Simon Cowell remained. Millions kept watching. The empty chair was filled. And eventually, for casual viewers, David Walliams became a former judge rather than the David Walliams from Britain's Got Talent. But for Walliams himself, the story was clearly not that simple. Because leaving a television show is one thing. Losing control of the story surrounding why you left is something else entirely. And that may be the real reason this story refuses to disappear. David Walliams didn't simply walk away from Britain's Got Talent. His decade on the show ended in a collision between celebrity, privacy, accountability, and the increasingly unforgiving world of modern television. And once those worlds collided, there was probably never going to be a normal goodbye.